Hey, what you watching?
Dawn of the Dead, man.
Oh, great.
In the early to mid 2000s, zombie movies started to make a comeback and become popular again, so it was really just a matter of time before a classic like Dawn of the Dead was remade for modern audiences, and in 2004, that's exactly what happened. Although George Romero himself didn't like the remake, which is probably why he went ahead and started doing zombie movies again himself, the audiences and critics at the time found the movie to be pretty damn good, with some positive ratings and a decent box office pool. There was a very short list of remakes that are either just as good or better than the original, and for me, this movie is on that list. I think it's just as good as the original film, and even better in some aspects, but clearly the execution and direction are different. It stands on its own and does its own thing, and that's probably why I enjoyed so much. It took the idea of people trapped in a mall during a zombie outbreak and just did its own thing. There are a few callbacks and references to the original movie, but it's not distracting in any way, and it's really just a bonus for fans that notice. The screenplay was written by James Gunn, which definitely explains the humor in the movie that we'll talk about later. And Romero himself is also credited as a writer, but that's for the original 1978 movie, and considering that he didn't like this remake, it's safe to say that he didn't have much creative control or input, although the movie did take several of the original cast members and give them small roles as Easter eggs for fans to find, so that's pretty cool. And this was Zack Snyder's theatrical directorial debut. Before this, he spent years shooting commercials, music videos, and a TV documentary about Michael Jordan, and now he was tasked with directing a remake of one of the most influential zombie movies ever, and in my Snyder bro opinion, he knocked it out of the park. It's actually weird seeing this movie on his filmography because he would go on to do comic book movies that have a very distinct look and style that really started with his next film 300. You know, the slow-mo, the shots that look like they're ripped right out of a comic book, the slick stylistic action, the things that we know him for now. So by comparison, Dawn of the Dead feels very different from the films that we know him for, although when watching you can see very small nuggets of things that he would expand on later on. For starters, the cinematography. It isn't as flashy or stylistic as his future films, but for a zombie movie from the 2000s, it does offer a good variety of creative camera work and sequences, resulting in a pretty damn good looking movie at times. His visuals are things that he'll be known for in the future, so it's cool that even this early in his career, he definitely had an eye for some creative sequences and shots, even in a simple zombie movie. Another thing are his intro credit sequences packing as much information as possible. He's not the only one to do this, of course, but Snyder does this a lot, and usually it's done to set up the world or characters and get the viewer up to speed on what's happening. Here it's used right when the outbreak starts to show what's happening in the world and how governments, religions, and people in general are reacting to it, and how this outbreak is spreading and basically taking them all down. He would go on to do this again in Watchmen, Sucker Punch, BVS, and Army of the Dead, using the intro credits as a way to deliver information and to set up the characters and world. And it's all mostly done visually, with very little dialogue and in a short amount of time. Hell, another thing I noticed are the several slow-mo shots. They happen either at important moments or to look cool, sometimes both. It's actually very tamed compared to how much slow-mo he would use later on. Even though this movie is very different than what he's known for, you can still see glimpses and pieces of his style that he expands upon later. So it makes watching this as a fan of his work pretty damn cool. Okay, that's enough sucking him off. Let's talk about the movie itself now.
What the fuck? Oh! Fuck that nigga up!
Okay, so here's the gist. An outbreak starts as bringing the dead back to life, and the world erupts into chaos as the undead starts to kill the living and turn more people into zombies. A group of survivors seek shelter in a shopping mall where they must survive. Easy enough, right? It's a very simple setup, and really looking at the movie, it's pretty straightforward. You got the group vibing and staving off the outbreak while solving issues that pop up. And sometimes, it's all you need for a zombie flick. A simple concept, and all you have to do is insert some awesome looking zombies, blood, gore, and action. And this movie checks off every single one of those boxes. Like I already mentioned, I think this movie is great. It takes the same concept as the original and does its own thing with it, really focusing on and ramping up the action, the zombies, and the kills. But of course there's more to it than just that. So let me go ahead and list off what I think this movie does well. The first thing is the pacing. There's never a dull moment, and everything is done in service of moving the plot along. We still get the character moments and interactions, but they never really felt forced or dragged on or even boring. And this goes for both versions, the theatrical and unrated director's cut. That's right, there's a director's cut for this movie too. Well, it seems that's always been a thing since the beginning of Snyder's career. The director's cut is only 10 minutes longer, bringing the runtime up to 1 hour and 45 minutes. And from what I can tell, most of this extra footage are just extended zombie kills, and you get to see a little bit more gore on screen, as well as a few more scenes with some more mangled looking zombies. These scenes were trimmed down or cut out to keep the R rating for the theatrical run. There are also a few more character focused scenes which are fine to give us a bit more insight to the characters, but thankfully most of these scenes are just longer versions of the ones we already have in the movie, and all the new scenes focused on the characters aren't too long and don't overstay their welcome and don't feel like a drag. Now the movie itself doesn't waste time getting to the outbreak. How it actually happens is the background for the first 4 or 5 minutes as the main character makes her way home, and then before you know it her husband is infected and the entire neighborhood has gone to shit. And then you're delivered a bunch of information during the opening credits about how bad things are, and then boom, within 10 minutes you're in the thick of it. And then from there, the movie just keeps up the momentum. So I really gotta applaud the pacing because there's never a dull moment. And now let's talk about the zombies, because let's be real, the zombies and the survivors dealing with them are why we're here. So you want some good looking undead and some good kills. And Dawn of the Dead doesn't disappoint in either department. They are fucking intense. From their looks, to the way they act and sound, to the way they're taken out. The makeup and prosthetic effects look fantastic, with the flesh looking torn and ripped and even limbs missing. It's awesome. It turns out they actually hired amputees who have missing arms and missing legs for these roles. When watching the behind the scenes footage, the lead makeup artist explained what Zack Snyder wanted with the appearance of the zombies, and they basically broke it down into 3 stages, one for each act of the movie. Stage 1 zombies are the initial infected, which you'll see during the first act. Then stage 2 they will start to decay and rot, with pieces of their flesh and skin falling off. And then stage 3 they are decaying, rotting, and just falling apart, and just looking absolutely gross. And that's how they look during the third act of the movie. It's a neat touch and it's pretty cool once you notice it. So you see that most of the zombies are just getting worse and worse as the movie progresses. Like 28 Days Later, they took the fast running zombie approach, and it's fucking intense. They're fast and violent and vicious, and when the survivors run into them, you feel stressed as watching these things pound and throw their bodies into peril without any caution trying to get to them. Not to mention the hissing and snarling noises are excellent, and really drives home how deranged and vicious these things really are. And then of course you got the kills. They're pretty great. Some of the best ones come toward the second half of the movie, but overall when it comes to the zombies and dispatching them, it's always very bloody. Another great thing is that the focus is always about the zombies. The drama between the humans is toned down to instead focus on the issues around surviving and dealing with the zombies. And most of the scenes that are drama between characters are still related to either the zombies or surviving, like them bickering about whether or not to kill someone who's been bitten, or how to get food to their friend across the street through a horde of zombies. So even when the zombies aren't on screen, they're still the primary focus. Most of the conversations are about dealing with them and how to survive. The film never focuses heavy on melodrama. And the movie is pretty funny at times. Like, it has some surprisingly upbeat scenes and moments, and uses several songs as a way to kind of make light of the situation. Like, there's an acoustic cover of Down with the Sickness. That's fucking funny. And some characters will say things, only for it to actually happen later on in a bit of irony.
I'll kill each and every one of you to stay alive, you hear me? Fucking figure!
You have my permission. I ever turn into one of those things? Do me a favor, blow my fucking head off.
And hell, there's even a scene where CJ points out exactly what they're going to do in the third act of the movie.
You're suggesting that we take some fucking parking shuttles and reinforce them with some aluminum siding and then just head on over to the gun store where we watch our good friend Andy play some cowboy movie jump on the covered wagon bullshit. Then, we're gonna drive across the ruined city through a welcome committee of a few 100,000 dead cannibals, all so that we can sail off into the sunset on this fucking asshole's boat and head for some island that for all we know doesn't even exist?
He points out how ridiculous it is, but they're gonna do it anyway. The screenplay was written by James Gunn, so I'm not surprised that the movie has humor in it. It's not the quippy, banter-based humor, it's more so just some funny creative choices that are pretty ironic and you as the viewer notice it and it makes you laugh. But there still are definitely some funny lines.
I tell you what, go in the stall, say 5 Hail Marys, wipe your ass, and you and God can call it even.
It reminds me of what Snyder said while doing interviews for Army of the Dead. It's about having fun but not making fun. And this movie does that. It doesn't get too cheeky or wink too hard at the audience. In the commentary for the deleted scenes, Snyder mentions that they had to cut a few of them for that exact reason. They didn't want to play it up too much. They wanted to strike a nice balance between seriousness and humor. That way it can still remain grounded, but still have moments of humor to lighten the situation. Although the zombie baby was a bit goofy, and it really is the silliest thing in the movie. But overall, it has humor without it being too overbearing. Honestly, the only weak spot are most of the characters. Ken and CJ are my favorites. Anna isn't too bad either. But the rest of the cast aren't that memorable. They aren't terrible, just none of them stand out. And most of them are just defined by their character traits. You got the dickhead character that no one likes, the sexy blonde chick, the young couple, the old lady who smokes, and the pregnant lady. And the rest of them are just kind of there. You don't really remember the characters themselves, you just remember things about them. Oh, and I think it's funny how fast Anna gets over her husband and starts falling for this guy named Michael. I thought that was a bit odd and kind of fast. But yeah, outside of 3 of them, most of the characters just aren't that memorable at all, and are just kind of there. But I want to talk about my favorite character for a bit, CJ. I like that he's introduced as kind of a prick, and you think that he's going to be like the human antagonist character. But no, it's a bait and switch, and he actually starts helping the survivors because it's the smart thing to do. And honestly, really thinking about it, most of us would probably be CJ in this situation. He's scared, paranoid, and untrusting, and just as confused about what's going on as everybody else. So he's watching news broadcastings to try to find answers, only to get frustrated when there isn't one. And he only acts like a dick because he's trying to survive. But then he starts helping the group because, well, it's the smarter thing to do. And I think it's really why I like him so much. He's probably the most believable character, and I like that he just didn't stay the human antagonist that messes things up for the good group of survivors. Nope, he ends up joining them. So all in all, Zack Snyder's 2004 remake of Dawn of the Dead is a fucking banger. And I already liked it before I was really following Zack Snyder's work, but once I got older and found out that he made the movie, it made me like it even more. It's a movie I find myself putting on every Halloween because it's just so damn fun and entertaining. Now, is it as good as something like 28 Days Later? Well, no, but it's definitely a top tier zombie flick that's incredibly entertaining, filled with lots of blood, gore, and action. And upon its release in the mid-2000s, it helped pioneer the way for this new wave of zombie media. So yeah, one hell of a movie, and I recommend you check it out. Now it's time to ask you guys, what do you think of Zack Snyder's 2004 remake of Dawn of the Dead? How's it compared to the original? Do you like it more? Do you like it less? Leave a comment and let me know. And hell, tell me what your favorite zombie flick is. And of course, I'll give a nice big shout out to the channel members. If you guys are banging down my door during zombie apocalypse, I'd let you in. If you're interested in becoming a channel member, click the join button down below to check out the perks. If they interest you, consider joining. Or not, it don't matter.
None of this matters.
And nobody likes you, and you have no friends, and you're a loser, and you deserved it. Okay? There's nothing Giga Chad. There's no big energy here. It's just you being a little crybaby bitch.